So first things first, I want to apologize for the quality in this video. It's going to be a little bit janky, and that's because we've had two tornadoes in the last 2 weeks, and I am currently without power. So I am just thugging it out. But I wanted to make sure I kept my regular cadence of filming, and so bear with me through this video, but it's going to be some good content. So stick around if you are trying to figure out what is keeping you from passing your Illinois teacher licensure exam. So let's jump into it. So you finish taking your exam, you walk out of the testing center and you get a sheet of paper, and on that sheet of paper you see three very disappointing words: did not pass. And subconsciously in your mind, you start to really think about, okay, what do I need to do next time? That little voice in your brain tells you you need to study more, study harder, study longer, buy more books, get more resources, do all of the things that you've been doing, but times 10. I want to pause you right there because even though that voice in your brain sounds responsible, you are taking accountability, you are creating a plan, that little voice in your brain is also going to have you doing the same thing that you've been doing that has caused you not to pass this test in the first place. So here's the belief that most people walk out of their exam with, especially if they didn't pass the exam. They walk out with the belief of, I did not pass it because I don't know enough. And I get why that is the default that most people go to, because traditionally in school, when you take a test and you don't pass it, it is likely because you did not study for that test. However, the ILTS is not a school test. It is not testing. It is not only, should I say, testing the knowledge that you have, it is also testing how you take this particular exam. And test literacy, or how you take this exam, and knowing the content knowledge are two very different skills. So here's what I want you to sit with. A failing score does not tell you that you don't know enough. It only tells you where you are leaking points, but it doesn't tell you why you are leaking those points. Think about what your score report actually gives you. What is the information on your score report? So you have the scaled score of less than 240. You have a score per sub area, and the only thing that those sub area scores tells you is where you're strong and where you are weak. That is it. It is not telling you why you missed those particular questions. It is not giving you information on which types of questions that you missed. Your score report cannot tell you whether you've missed a question because you didn't know the content, or if you missed the question because you didn't see the distractor pattern, or if you missed the question because you ran out of time, or if you missed the question because your working memory was so overwhelmed that you started to second guess yourself. It doesn't tell you any of those things. Your score report is just data. It is not a study plan, so stop treating it as such. Treating a low score in one domain as I need to study more in this same domain is the single most common error that I see people make when it comes to developing a study plan. So based on my experience, when someone doesn't pass the exam, that means that their points have been leaked out in one of four gaps, and each of those reasons have a different fix. So let's jump into what those reasons are. The first reason is the content gap. You know you have a content gap if you are taking the test and there are keywords or terms that are domain specific that you truly do not recognize. The knowledge simply is not there. This is the gap that most people assume that they have, but I would say about 90% of the time, this is not the case. The second gap is the strategy gap. You knew the material, but you are unfamiliar with the way this test asks specific questions. You didn't catch that this question was asking you for the first step and not necessarily the best step. Or you fell for a distractor pattern that was designed to look like the right answer. Knowing the content and knowing how to answer questions on this particular test are two completely different skills, and the ILTS rewards both equally. The third gap is a study gap. So you spend hours studying content. You have mapped out the very little time that you have in your very busy life to use that for studying. However, when you are studying, you're studying everything all at once. And that research shows that it's not the most effective way to study, and particularly for this type of exam. So you may have spent time studying all of the things that you think that you've gotten wrong instead of really honing in on those specific skills based on the data from your score report. The final gap is a performance gap. So you know the material, you understand how the questions are asked on this particular test. However, on test day, when you get out of that car and walk into that testing center, your mind goes blank, your body starts to sweat, you may start to shake and shiver just a little bit. The knowledge is there. However, it's not translating into the actual exam. So there's the content gap, the strategy gap, the study gap, and the performance gap. 4 different gaps, and you can lose the same 10 points between either of those gaps. Again, your score report is not telling you why you're leaking those points. It's only telling you that you are leaking points. So now let's get closer to which gap is actually yours. I'm going to walk through 4 different scenarios, and I want you to listen and then pause when you hear the one that sounds like you. First scenario: you finish with time to spare, you walk out, and you're feeling okay, not great, but just okay. The fail genuinely surprised you, and when you replay it, the moments you are least sure about the scenario questions were the ones you could argue for 2 of the 4 answers. If that is you, listen for the strategy gap. Second scenario: one domain on your score report came back noticeably lower than the rest. And if you're being honest with yourself, it's the area that you've always felt pretty shaky in. Part of you saw it coming. That is a content gap. Scenario 3: you studied, and I mean a lot, but it was all of it and all at once, crammed into whatever pockets of time you can grab between work, the kids, school, and everything else. And you never really quite got very deep on the domains that ended up costing you the most points. If that is you, that is a study gap, not a content gap. Scenario 4: you know the material, you've taught pieces of it, but in that room, something in you just clenched. You went blank. You changed the right answers to the wrong ones, or the clock beat you out. That is a performance gap. Most people are one clear gap and a little bit of a second. And one thing that I really want you to notice is that there's only one of those gaps that is fixed with more studying. Just one. So here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to walk into your next test session blind. I don't want you guessing and throwing more hours at a problem that you actually have not named. The fastest way to name your gap is to use my strategy gap screener. It's 20 questions, no studying required, and it is designed to help you identify your first and your second most prevalent gaps so that your next round of prep goes exactly where you're leaking those points. My strategy gap screener is free and it is exclusive to my email list. So if you want access to it, click the link in the description below to join my email list. One thing that I want you to sit with before the next video is I want you to think about your last attempt, and not necessarily think about the score, but think about the experience of your last attempt, from preparation to actually sitting down in the testing center. What was that like? Where do you believe that you lost the most points? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single comment, and your comments really help me to drive where I'm going to be focusing on next. If this video landed for you, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, share it with someone who needs it, because it's about time that we all get over the hurdle. I will see you back here next week with a new video and a new strategy. Bye.